All right, guys, I got Christopher Albert here. Chris is actually a Marine. And guys, don't ever call a Marine a former Marine because this guy might choke you out. He's pretty much a badass all around. He's trained NFL football players to pro bodybuilders. He's actually got his own clothing apparel line around Warrior Soul Fitness. And he's all around just an awesome dude. He's also a business coach with London Real. He's one of the top business coaches around the world. He's actually in London. His name's Brian Rose. And I just want to thank Chris for coming on today to share some of his techniques that he uses to get guys chiseled. The guy looks, I think I showed your picture the other day to somebody, and they're like, that guy doesn't look real. He looks like he's made out of clay. And I was like, yeah, he's pretty much a badass. So Chris, man, just thanks a lot for having me on the show today. And I look forward to, if you're an entrepreneur out there and you got questions on the business side of things, or if you want to get in shape and you want to lose that extra 50 to 100 pounds, Chris is your guy.
Yeah. First let me say this. As far as physiques go, I mean, you can't ever judge a book by its cover. I'm pretty much I can't curse on this podcast, can I?
Do whatever you want, man.
Yeah. I'm pretty much a wuss, man. I just started, I'm a white belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm more proud of that than I am of any bodybuilding accolades I have. I think bodybuilding is a great sport for certain people, and I've really enjoyed helping people with their physiques. At the same time, I don't think it necessarily hardens them in like something like jiu-jitsu does, or MMA does, or wrestling does, or some of those other things. So, but as far as fitness goes, I'm a big advocate for fitness in general, and I think it's the key to somebody actually living a free life, because regardless of how much money you make or how much you have around you or what your material possessions are, the two things that you depend on are your mind and your body. And so at the end of the day, fitness is your key to freedom. Fitness is your ability to do whatever you want to do for the rest of your life in the way you want to do it.
Mm-hmm. And I know, Chris, you were being a Marine and stuff like that. I mean, you were in a time, going to combat and stuff overseas and stuff. And there were some things that, you saw and things that actually happened. And then afterwards, there was that transition time period where things weren't always like rosy, just like things weren't rosy for me as well. And it's one of those things where you've now connected with some of the most brilliant minds out there, whether it's to do with like TBI or deal with PTSD. And I know you have your own podcast even around that, which I think is phenomenal.
Yeah, let me say this too. I had an easy deployment. When I was in Iraq, I had an easy deployment. So I don't characterize myself as a combat veteran or anything like that at all. My deployment consisted of guarding people and waving at Iraqis. So I want to put that out front right now. Anything that happened to me as far as difficulties, which there were a lot of difficulties in transitioning out, anything that happened to me was my own damn fault. I was a drunk. I was a womanizer. I was a piece of crap. And that was the issue. I did have a lot of survivor's guilt because my unit ended up going back, and they didn't have such an easy deployment. I've had Marines who served with me who got killed. I had a friend of mine who got shot in the face. And so I was dealing with that guilt aspect of it, as far as me having a really cakewalk deployment and then coming back and being here. But again, that's no excuse for anything except for the fact that I was making some really bad decisions at the time. And it was me walking around with a bottle of Jameson. It was me walking around drinking all the time. It was me putting myself into those situations. And so the second I was able to own up to that, and the second that I was able to say, hey, you know what? All the bad shit that's happening to you right now, like the fact that you're living out of your car, or the fact that, you're friggin' half dead all the time, or the fact that you look like you're friggin' 45 years old and you're 27, that's because of the actions you're taking. And when you realize something like that, you also realize that you have a lot more control over your life than you think you do. And so I was able to make some corrections and correct course.
Well, Chris, first of all, thank you for your service. And also thank you for sharing that story, because that definitely hit home with me. And I know it's hit home with a lot of other Marines out there. I mean, I had a somewhat of an easy deployment, I would consider, in retrospect. And you look back, and the next time the Marines went over there, I wasn't even be there. And that was one of those things where I had survivor's guilt from as well. Yeah. So, and I really never realized it. And I had buried a lot of anger around that. And it was until I sat down with a friend of mine he was a Navy SEAL that went to he was in charge of the Panama operation when things went south there, and a lot of those Navy SEALs died that day. And he had survivor's guilt, and he never realized it either. And he started sharing his story about how he how he got help and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, it's like, that I never even thought about it, and I was like, wow, survivor's guilt, what's that? And it's one of the things I think a lot of Marines out there, and a lot of servicemen, and a lot of firemen and police officers out there, I feel they go through a lot of the same stuff. And I think you're not alone by any stretch of the imagination with that. That's damn true.
Yeah. I also think that, as far as things go, you could think in a couple of different ways, right? So if you're searching for something to be mad and pissed off about, you're going to find it. This world's a fucked up place. There's none of us who are not touched by tragedy in some way. There's none of us who are not faced with some sort of difficulty. The key is in how you view it. Now, at the time, I was viewing it as, oh, fuck, poor me, blah, blah, blah. I didn't get the chance to be there with my guys, which is perfectly natural, I think, feeling. But I didn't look at it at the time as, well, you know what, maybe there's an opportunity for me here to help others. Maybe there's an opportunity for me here to use these feelings that I'm having to put something together. And I think once I was able to do that, then that's when my life got a lot better, because I was able to say to myself, well, if I want to help other people, I can't be sipping on whiskey all the time. If I want to help other people, it's probably not a good idea to be smoking a pack and a half of cigarettes and a can and a half of Copenhagen a day. If I want to do this, then it's probably not a good idea for me to be spending all my money at bars and going to casinos and things like that. And so that led to a big change in my life, because it turned from, oh, poor me, I'm into all this shit right now, to, you know what, I'm actually pretty goddamn lucky. I'm living, I'm breathing. I live in the United States of America, where I get the opportunity to do things like sit here on the computer and talk to you, or go outside and train jujitsu and train in a gym, and don't have to worry about bullets flying at me right now or anything like that. I can open up a business. I can do whatever I want here. And that's an amazing thing. And even though I was poor, even though I, was homeless for a bit, I was homeless in the United States of America, where, if you go to some other places abroad, if you go to some other places around the world, the average person is living worse than I was when I was living out of my car. So that's a huge thing. And I think that what's important for all of us is to stop looking for shit to just be pissed off about, and to stop looking for shit to feel sorry for ourselves about, and to start looking for the good things, start being grateful, start actually appreciating what you do have.
Yeah. Well, Chris, again, thank you for sharing that, because I know that hits home. I remember being at a pretty low point as well. And I think The Rock kind of quotes it best when it's 1995. He says, I had $7 in my pocket, and I knew two things. I was broke as hell, and one day I wouldn't be. Mm-hmm. You can achieve anything you set your mind out to. And I think that's one of those things where there's a difference in a mindset between being broke and being poor. Mm-hmm. And at the time you were just broke, and there's a difference, between being poor, because poor is permanent, mm-hmm. And one of the things you kind of say about overseas, I I'll never forget this. As we had just crossed over in the line of departure into Iraq from Kuwait, and we're driving through the middle of the desert. And I never forget, like I was in the back of the like tail end Charlie side of things, and we're like the last two vehicles because that's the way we had to provide like security. And there was this family off like in a little distance area, and they came out of these cardboard boxes and they were watching us drive through this middle of the desert. When I say the middle of the desert, I mean like there's nothing for miles and you just can't see anything. And this family is like living, it almost looked like in these boxes. And it was just like, I was like, it's just like, you think to yourself, like, how can somebody even live like that? They're running through the desert and God knows how hot it was, the sand and stuff like that. And little kids that run around on the sidewalk with no shoes, you know, and you realize they're just happy to be alive. You know,
oh yeah.
How's real spoiled we are here in America to have all the stuff that we do.
Yeah. Same thing here. You know, I served in Southern Iraq, right around that same area. And, you know, we were right by the Khwar Abdullah, and I was watching little kids fish right over there. And, you know, prior to seeing those kids, I was like, oh man, it sucks here. You know, oh, it's hot. But then I was like, you know, those kids, I'm going to be out of here in a few months. Those kids got to be here for the rest of their lives. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. Yeah, we're all way more lucky than we actually believe we are. And it all depends on the way you look at things, what you're searching for. And like I said, if you're searching to be pissed off, you're going to find ways of being pissed off really easily. There's so much in this world that could piss you off. And there's so much bad in this world. But when you realize that there's so much bad in this world, and that right now, most of us are sitting watching this broadcast on a cell phone or on a computer, you know, that in and of itself is a luxury. You know, it's something that a lot of people in the world don't have. And, you know, we're able to do this now because we're blessed. You know, that's the biggest thing. You've got to really realize what you have. You got to realize the resources that you have, you know, and we live in a time and a place where you could build a business without having to go through all the steps that you had to go, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago, where you'd have to go to City Hall. You have to get your business license. You have to set up a shop in a brick and mortar store. You have to make sure that your sign's up. You know, you right now go to Shopify.com, set up a website for $25 and friggin', you know, set up an online fulfillment center for a t-shirt or something like that, or a mug, and you instantly have a business. What other time and place could we do that?
It's absolutely insane. Now let's hear a little bit about how you did that, because you went from you met, and this is how you and I met each other. I was company commander of a unit, and one of my Marines, Christopher Albert, who runs a t-shirt company, and you guys connected. How did you guys connect back in, was it Santa Monica? Was it?
No, Santa Barbara.
Barbara.
Albert Carrasco, that was your Marine. I was a student at UC Santa Barbara, and you know, the story goes, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I didn't want to work for anybody else anymore, and two, I didn't really have the mind or the foresight to open up a business at the time. So I said, all right, let me do what my family wants me to do, and I'm going to go to school. And not only am I going to go to school, I'm going to go to school on steroids. So I got a degree from the University of Connecticut, and then I was up there. I was freezing my ass off, and then I got this brochure from a school on the Southern California coast, and it looked beautiful. And I said, all right, maybe I can go study there. So I applied to their PhD program. And so I sat for 4 years on the California coast using my veterans benefits for the PhD program at UC Santa Barbara. I was studying international politics and quantitative methodology. And when I say international politics, it's not like we're sitting around philosophizing over you know, politics. What you're doing is you're creating theories, and you're testing those theories scientifically. So I was building mathematical models of decision making, and then creating hypotheses based off of those models, and then testing them against the hard data.
So you went from being a Marine, guarding stuff and shooting stuff, to being a PhD guy.
Yeah. Which, and this is the thing, PhDs aren't smart, and you have to understand that. They're
don't let them hear that.
Well, they aren't. They're experts in. So if there was, if the entirety of knowledge was a big breast, right? Getting a PhD is like going into the nipple and then burrowing yourself into the nipple, and hanging out there and not going anywhere else, right? And most people who get PhDs, they want to be experts in like that much stuff. And so,
what if I want to move around in the breast? I can't move around in the breast. I mean, I'm stuck in the nipple.
No, you're stuck in the nipple area there. Yeah, and it's kind of like having a nipple stone where you're lodged there, but you can't get any milk out of it because, and I'm going way too far down.
That sounds painful.
Yeah.
Your nipple ring, it's like being stuck there.
Yeah. But it's really not that beneficial. I mean, I think that if, and to the guys out there, the only reason I really think I did it was because I wanted to hang out in Santa Barbara for 4 years. And that simple as that.
Not a bad place to hang out.
Not at all. It was beautiful. I learned how to write really well, how to research really well, how to analyze situations really well, but I didn't get much more than that out of it. And I could say that I have regrets about that because, I mean, despite the fact that I had GI Bill, I'm paying a shitload of debt on it, but I wouldn't be in California where I am. I wouldn't have had met a guy like Albert, who we'll talk about in a second. I wouldn't have met the woman I'm with right now. So, I can't say I have any regrets about it. But Albert was working in the Veterans Affairs office over there as a student employee. And we kept in touch because at the time I was competing in bodybuilding. He was interested in that kind of stuff. So we talked, and I knew he was a Marine. We stayed connected after I left Santa Barbara. I left Santa Barbara because I knew that writing articles that 5 people in the entire world would understand, and that 10 people would read really wasn't going to be something that I really wanted to do. I also I was a teacher up there, and you can imagine. So I consider myself on the political spectrum probably right of center, right? So I lean conservative, but I'm not like to the right of Attila the Hun or anything like that. When I moved to Santa Barbara, that kind of jumped more over to the right. Anytime you go to a school in Southern California or in California in general, you're going to be surrounded by people who have a different political view than you. And I'm not going to talk about politics here, but that was a situation for me. And I realized that I wasn't going to be thinking like a lot of these people. And I was always going to be the pariah in academia because I don't take everything that anybody feeds me. I don't take, I don't take spoon-fed knowledge. It was, I didn't want to conform. And, it was like, it was a pretty lonely existence, and I didn't want to experience that for the rest of my life. So I was like, all right, business it is. So I took what I was doing on the side there because I'd quit drinking, I'd quit smoking while I was up there, and we didn't even get into that. And I started bodybuilding, and then I started personal training on the side for money. And then I decided to take a lot of the money that I had saved up, and I partnered with somebody, and we opened up a gym called Metroflex Gym in Long Beach, which actually became a pretty famous gym. But
why did it become famous?
So why did it become famous? Well, a couple different reasons. When we set things up, we contacted photographers, and we were in the LA area, and we knew that American Media was down there, so we had a lot of photographers from like Flex Magazine and Muscle and Fitness, and they would come in and they would do photo shoots there. And that led to more people who wanted to do filming there and things like that. So the images of the gym started getting plastered all over the place. And then, we had a couple of guys, a guy by the name of CT Fletcher. He came in one day and nobody knew who he was. He just looked huge, right? So this is back when he was, he didn't have much money or anything like that. He just walked in the gym off the street on his way to work, and he was like, "Oh, this is pretty cool." He said he told us a little bit about his story and how, he was a power lifter, a world-class power lifter, and he had a heart attack and had to have open heart surgery, died on the table 3 times and things like that. And, we let him into the gym, and we said, come on in, train for free if you want. Because he had these 22-inch arms, and I walked back, and he was preacher curling 90-pound dumbbells, and I was like, whoa. So we let him in, and then it was a good decision because he became a YouTube star. I think he's got a few million subscribers on YouTube, and he's world famous right now. And then I also hired a trainer back then. I didn't hire him; he wasn't my employee, but he came into the gym to run his business, and his name was Mike Rashid, and he also ended up becoming a really popular YouTube star. And he was a good friend of mine.
This guy right here, right?
Yeah, that's CT.
So this is a guy that walked in off the street.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what's his story?
Well, we're talking about Long Beach here. I mean, things happen in Long Beach.
Things happen in Long Beach.
He's a really great guy, solid athlete, solid person. I don't think the YouTube videos catch it a lot, but he's a really genuinely gentle and nice person, like a good person who wants to do good by people. And, he comes on YouTube and he screams and stuff like that, but and I think that's awesome. He's motivated so many people, but he's a really good person on top of that. And, that's what I don't think a lot of people get. But we did that. But at the same time, even though the gym was getting more and more well known, I had made a couple of really bad decisions at the time. One, I made the decision of opening up a business with somebody and I had no personal capital at all to survive off of. So I was literally I was working like 15, 16-hour days, and I had no income. I was maybe surviving off of like $300, $400 a month at the time. And it got brutal. And I did that for 3 years. And I had gotten married a little bit before that, and ended up divorced, unsurprisingly. And I was suffering from ulcerative colitis. And all the while I was still training people while running the gym. Right.
So pause real quick, because I didn't know what ulcerative colitis was, and I have a feeling there's a lot of other people that don't know what that is. You kind of shared with me and that it makes you shit like 50 times a day or something like that, and it makes you bleed from the inside. It doesn't sound like it's something that's a fun thing to have.
Yeah, it's what they call an autoimmune disease, and basically your intestinal tract gets attacked by your immune system. And it happens because of too much total body chronic inflammation.
You're doing that working 16 hours a day and running the gym.
Shitting blood. Yep.
Shitting blood all at the same time for 3 years.
3 years. Yep. And then most of the money that I was earning from personal training was going back into the gym. And like I said, I was living off of about $300 cash a month. And eventually ended up having to pull my shares out of the gym, which I sold to somebody for $10, and ended up living out of my car for a while. Now I got to train at Metroflex and be a trainer there for about another year after that. I was still a trainer there. But it was kind of like one of the biggest defeats in my life. I call it my MBA, because I learned a lot. I learned a lot about opening up a brick and mortar business. I learned a lot about people. I learned a lot about how, when things are good, people are going to be coming around a lot and being like, hey, what's up? Can I hang out with you? Things like that. And when things are bad, they're going to be like, I don't want anything to do with you.
Find out who your real friends are.
Yeah, exactly.
I interviewed a Marine the other day, and his dad, and him kind of taught me, he calls them his fire friends. Mm-hmm. Like those are the friends you have that no matter what happens, like you can call them and they'll come get you out of a burning building.
Yeah. Yeah. And the cool thing was, like, at the time, when I was rebuilding things and I had nothing, I met this amazing woman. Her name's Shauna. I don't know what it was, but like, I saw her and we went on a couple of dates. I wouldn't call them dates really. It was just like, I was just trying to vent at the time, to somebody. So it was more like a friendship at first. And then, at one point I was sitting there and like, I was so emotionally drained at the time. I was so physically drained, that, I hadn't been present in a long time. And by present, I mean, is like actually in the moment. And then I was sitting there, I was talking to her, and I realized, that for the first time in a long time, I didn't want to be anywhere else. And so, I got to meet her, and we started dating, and, we're still together years later. And, actually we're coming up on our anniversary soon. And we live out here now in Redlands, California.
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Thanks, man.
Huge.
But, so as far as, business wise, at the time I needed to figure out something to do for money. I was taking on in-person clients for cash. And then, somebody said, you know what, you should start a YouTube channel. So I started a YouTube channel and just started talking about fitness and things like that. And, I started getting all these emails, from people who wanted to ask me questions. And then I started getting emails from people in like England and Australia, and they wanted to work with me, as my client. And I was like, well, how am I going to do this? So I was like, oh yeah. I do this all the time.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah. So I went over to Google Drive and I set up, a few different formats as far as like things that I could put input into and create plans on, and started creating plans online and started making a lot more money than I was that I ever did as an in-person trainer, a whole lot more money. And then that things changed. It was awesome. The YouTube channel continued to build up. I was taking on more and more clients until I started taking on clients to the point where all I was doing was sitting in front of an Excel spreadsheet. So I had a lot of money, but I wasn't actually like in the gym, and I kind of missed that aspect of it. So I started competing again. I started competing in bodybuilding. I kind of took care of some things related to my ulcerative colitis through nutrition, by switching to more of a ketogenic diet, which we can get into later. But I've tasted success, and I was like, all right, now that I've done this, I went from living in my car to being depressed and not having anything to, I was living in a rented room at the time, but it felt like a palace. I was making money. I was able to put food on the table. I wasn't worrying about where my next meal was coming from. I said, all right, now it's time to start to try to spread this message to others. And this is about, 3-4 years ago when, we had a really bad veteran suicide rate. And we still do, but at the time, this is when it was just started coming out to the press. And I said, if I could do this for myself, and this is the way I looked at a lot of the Marines I served with and Marines in general. I used to, when I served, I wasn't a very good Marine. I was a shit bag, or at best marginal, at best average. I think, you know, but I wasn't.
Those pro cons marks.
I never had really bad pro con marks, and it wasn't that. It's just like my personality. I'm so much of an individual, I guess you could say. And that's not to say that people in the Marine Corps aren't individuals, but I'm like abnormally individual, where I'm the kind of guy who likes to go sit off in the corner and chill and like do things. And like, but the thing is, I always looked up to so many of the Marines I served with, and you know, everybody I ever met. And I was like, you know, these guys are so awesome. And I couldn't believe that people like this were suffering so much. And it was like watching my superheroes suffer. Yeah. You know, and I wanted to do something because I figured if I'm such a shitbag and I could do this, then all of them can too. You know, so I wanted a way of inspiring them, and I couldn't sell training because training, you know, at the time it was probably too expensive for a lot of them. So I said, we'll do the next best thing. So I said, I was literally sitting there at this same desk, not in the same room, but at the same desk. And I was like, t-shirts. And then I was like, oh, I know Albert. Albert's a Marine, and he makes t-shirts. So I called him up, and I was like, hey, Albert, here's what I want to do. I want to set up a t-shirt company, and I just don't want to deal with any of the fulfillment. I don't want to deal with any of that stuff. And I want to set up a website. I want it to be online, and it's going to be a Marine Corps veteran t-shirt company. And he was like, cool. So the first shirt we produced was one of those Keep Calm shirts. But it was it said, keep calm and have a plan to kill everyone you meet.
General Mattis quote.
Yeah. Well, it's not a direct General Mattis quote, but
he
wanted to do that. So, and what we were trying to do was, I didn't want to do like the typical kind of moto stuff you saw in the Marine Corps, because like I'd seen Ranger Up, and I think they're such a great t-shirt company. I'd seen Grunt Style, and they do so many amazing things, but there's not a lot of stuff for the Marine Corps out there, or there wasn't at the time. A lot of their stuff was geared toward the Army, and wasn't like specifically Marine Corps. And so, you know, people ask me, because now we cater to all veterans. You know, we're not just a Marine Corps company, and I love my brothers and sisters in the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, and the Coast Guard. But you know, the reason why we have so much Marine Corps geared material on the site is because that's how we started. You know, we did a chesty t-shirt. And you know, in some ways I look at some of the first t-shirts we produced, and they weren't like great, they weren't good or anything like that, but they were something, you know. And so we got them out there. And you know, over the next year, I spent a lot of my time just trying to figure out how to get the message out, all while doing a lot of online training. And you know, I'd spend my mornings doing the online training stuff. I'd go train at the gym, and then I'd come back and I'd work on Warrior Soul stuff. And Warrior Soul was just basically a figment of my imagination for a while. And so you know, I try to produce some content here, I try to do this, and then you know, I started doing, I fell back on my numbers game, and you know, from the PhD work, and I started looking at Facebook and Facebook ads and Facebook boosted posts and things like that. Because prior to that, you know, Facebook, when I first started on YouTube, it was like, you take the YouTube link, you post it on your Facebook page, and you'll get a bunch of people looking at your Facebook page. I mean, it was awesome back then. You know, that I built up my YouTube following pretty quickly like that. But by the time I'd started Warrior Soul, Facebook had wisened up, and they developed the algorithm, and they weren't putting our stuff out there for shit, you know. And so I started figuring out how to boost the posts, how to do the ads and things like that. And I slowly got better at it, kept plugging away. I'd spend $5 here, $5 there. And then, you know, I remember specifically the day I had boosted a post didn't even think anything of it. Then I went to check my back end on the website, and I was like, oh shit, I got 10 sales. How'd that happen? And because I'd been hitting Instagram, I'd been doing all this stuff. And that's when I really started dedicating myself to learn more about online marketing.
Let's ask you a question. So golden nugget is, number one is you never gave up, through this whole thing. You could have every excuse under the sun you could have used to just sit on your ass and not do anything. But the burning desire to want to not just get your own ass in gear, but also saw your brothers out there who are committing suicide. I've had Marines commit suicide as well. And it's one of those things that kind of chaps my ass too. And you wanted to be able to help guys. And that's really the ethos behind, the Warrior Soul Apparel, is your in your brand, is it not?
Yeah, it's living your best life. The thing is, I got really good at suffering, right? So I was suffering from disease. I was suffering financially. I was suffering, and that's the thing. I can suffer indefinitely. I'm really good at that. And a lot of us are. We're really good at suffering. But what I wasn't good at for a while was detaching myself from the situation and really analyzing it to see how I could help myself out away from it. Because, some of us, we carry this martyr's cross.
The big old cross on your back, right?
Yeah. We carry that martyr's cross for suffering, and you just want to embrace the suck, and you want to keep grinding and grinding and grinding. But it's like on the battlefield. As an officer, you couldn't be up there with your privates online all the time. You had to take a step back and see things, for what they were. I'm talking about you, not me. I wasn't a fucking officer.
I know. But my Marines were grabbing, hey sir, you need to come back over here.
Yeah.
I always envied the privates. They had no idea, and I think the Marine Corps, the best job is being a sergeant, because you don't quite have to deal with all the bullshit of the
no. The best job in the Marine Corps is being a Lance Corporal. I had the time of my life.
You get away with murder as a Lance Corporal.
I loved being a Lance Corporal. It was my favorite rank. As soon as I went to Corporal, I was like, fuck, this sucks.
Because being a major.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine that. I remember, I won't go into those stories, but
so tell us some of the lessons you learned from the front lines of the Marine Corps, some things who's carried you over now into business, and how you're applying those lessons.
I learned resilience, I think, from the Marine Corps, and that's coming out from a bad situation and not breaking to it, but integrating it into your being as something that you can use, right? And I think that's something you learn a lot of. You integrate your mistakes. You don't dwell on them. You don't sit there and you're like, oh fuck, I made a mistake. You got to take that mistake and you got to move on. You got to take action. I learned decision making. I learned how to handle high stress situations, I guess you could say. I learned about personal management a whole lot. And that's, I think, one of the biggest things that's helped me. I will never let myself go physically, ever. I will never let myself go physically. And the reason is because I understand what happens when you don't, but it was that prep that you do every morning when you wake up, right? And you get out there for PT, but that PT is not enough, because you're gonna be facing a whole lot more difficulty than that. So you get out there and you do the extra stuff. You go on your own humps. You train with weights and things like that. And that was one of the biggest things that I learned there, as far as personal management, taking care of yourself, and really being responsible for yourself, being responsible for your actions, and owning up to what you do. And it took me a while because, I forgot a lot of those lessons for a bit. And I think everybody does. You get out and you're a civilian now and you're like, oh, fuck this, I'm done. You know what I mean? I'm spray paint the boots, throw them up on the wire, and you're like, fuck this. I don't ever want to deal with that again. Fuck that. And then, a few years later, you're like, something happens. You start to miss it. You start to miss it a lot. And, I can say now that I do miss it. I do miss it a lot. I miss a lot of the little things. I miss the way the barracks hall smelled. You know what I mean? I miss the guys. I miss being around people a whole lot. You're never around so many people in your life, and you don't realize that. You're never around so many friends in your life. So that's one thing. I miss being young and being paid, and not having a worry in the world except for your job. That's the other thing. I mean, anybody out there who's still in the service, and if you're between the ages of 18 to 22 and you're not married yet, you don't have a goddamn thing to worry about. I mean, yeah, there's the whole danger aspect to it, but you don't have bills right now, unless you made the dumb decision of going out and buying a car.
$50,000 car.
Yeah, but you don't have bills right now. You don't have to worry about paying rent. You don't even have to worry about what you're going to wear during the day. Yeah.
This is a shout out to my he was my first sergeant at the time, eventually became sergeant major. So good old Wayne Hertz, he used to be on my ass about my car. Literally, I was missing one hubcap off this old LeBaron. It was a convertible LeBaron. It was a hand-me-down car, and I didn't give a shit. I didn't care what I drove and stuff like that. And we come back from deployment, and this other corporal was driving like an X3 freaking BMW, and and my first sergeant's got his big old Hemi truck and all this stuff that he's got brand new, and I was like, that's cool. I was like, guys, I'm not putting my money into something that's not going to be making me money or doing something,
Yeah.
So it's just like I didn't care about any of that stuff. That's freaking hilarious. That's so true, and that is so true. The guys, as they get out and stuff, and they look back on things, and it's a lot of times in those situations where that's when the suicides actually start to happen, because they realize they're not with their brothers anymore.
Yeah.
And I've seen that time again. So I know you've got, tell us a little bit about the podcast that you have and how you're connected with these doctors to do TBI stuff and to do the psychology and the PTSD, the work they're doing. I mean, you got a phenomenal following over there on just the Warrior Soul Fitness apparel. I mean, you guys have 50-some thousand fans on the page, and you guys have some awesome stuff going here. So tell us a little bit more about how you're been able to connect with these individuals and how you'd be able to bring some of those people that are listening to this, and if they had questions on TBI or PTSD or some of that type of stuff, on how they can connect with you.
Sorry, my dog just woke up.
Oh, bring your dog up. Who's your co-host today?
Here, I'll show you. Oh,
nice. What's this devil dog's name?
This is Piper. She's part German Shepherd, part Schnauzer.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a weird looking mix. Look at the size of these things.
That's a big old ear.
Yeah. She's cute though.
That's a cool dog.
I got
Dotson run around.
Oh, nice. So as far as things go, I always wanted to make Warrior Soul into more of a lifestyle company. But to be honest with you, one of the problems I was having at the beginning was, how do I take this fitness stuff that I'm doing, which is bodybuilding centered at the time, which I've switched that completely. I don't really involve myself with bodybuilders much anymore. But
NFL players instead, right? So
yeah, one of them. But I wanted to create a more of a lifestyle company that was centered around health and helping people live better lives. And so, like I said, I was having a real issue trying to integrate everything. And if you look at the military clothing space out there, most of it's centered around kind of, this sick humor that we develop in the veteran world, which I think is a good thing.
Marines have a sick sense of humor.
We do. Yeah. Not only Marines, I mean, Army veterans, Navy guys, even the Air Force, they've got their own sense of humor,
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, I enjoy that a lot, and I think it's awesome, and I think it gives guys a way of releasing a lot of the stuff through humor. You know, I think the stuff Ranger Up does is amazing. I think the stuff Grunt Style does is amazing.
Yeah.
But I also didn't want to just try to be them. You know what I mean? I wanted to create something different. And I didn't want to copy everything they were doing. So, you know, I started putting more and more stuff out about life and about living your best life and about bringing ideas that a lot of the guys wouldn't have come in contact with to them. Right. So, you know, the idea of consciousness, the idea of, diet and nutrition, you know, for guys whose inflammation levels are probably through the roofs because they've been fed MREs for the past 4 years. They're out, you know, in the field, not sleeping much. They've been training intensely. You know, that's a perfect storm for total body chronic inflammation. And what nobody tells you is that that affects your hormones, that affects your brain function. And when you have too much inflammation, you start to develop depression. And when your brain function starts to get inhibited and your hormones go down, that brings up symptoms that look a whole lot like post-traumatic stress. So I think that one of the keys to solving our problems that we have now, and I'm not saying that trauma isn't a part of this or what people go through isn't a part of this, but I'm saying that if you have that combination of bad nutrition while someone's in their service in some of their formative years during their late teens, early 20s, you surround them with chemicals, you put them in high stress situations where they're dumping cortisol all the time, you're going to create the perfect storm for that type of situation where somebody's brain isn't going to be entirely in order or able to be resilient enough to handle the trauma that comes their way. And so one of the things I wanted to focus this company on was, well, how do we really change this situation? Where do we go to fix this? And I had started the podcast about a year ago, I think, to really bring a lot of these ideas to fruition and bring them to the public. And I went through about 20 episodes, and it was just me really sitting here reading stuff. You know, it was not good audio. I had to figure out how to do it myself and everything. But I just started going through books. You know, we went through the book Resilience by Eric Greitens. We went through Chesty's biography. And I talked about the fact that, you know, Chesty didn't just become an officer and become a legend. He failed out of OCS a couple of times, and he failed out of aviator school. You know, it just didn't happen for him. He had to work for it. He had to keep going. You know, we went through a bunch of Stephen Pressfield's books. We went through, I've got a bunch of them over here. I've gone through nutrition stuff, health stuff. And then eventually ended up having, you know, some guests on. I had Ben Greenfield on, and then I had a guy by the name of Andrew Marr on the podcast. And Andrew's retired Special Forces operator. And he was introduced to me through another friend of mine, Tony Florial. And Andrew is he got traumatic brain injury during one of his tours in Afghanistan, not because he'd been hit, but because over each of his 4 tours, he served as a breacher where he was using explosives and he was taking concussions to the brain. And it was just the shock waves from those explosives that were giving it to him. And he started a foundation called the Warrior Angels Foundation, where they help to help veterans to create what they call a neuropermissive environment in their brains. And when you have a neuropermissive environment versus a non-neuropermissive environment, and I could get all into the science right now, but I don't want to.
Yeah, I could tell the PhD's coming out right now.
Yeah. Well, you think I'm bad?
Down Barney style for us.
Yeah, you think I'm bad? Wait till you hear Andrew talking about it. The Special Forces guys, they get highly technical. He'll go into everything and bring it down. But yeah, basically what happens is one of the things we're seeing right now is that when somebody has traumatic brain injury, they get themselves into a situation where they are where they're shutting down their hormones, right? And so this is why we see a lot of the symptoms of PTS in victims of traumatic brain injury. And as your hormones start to go down, you get depressed. Your libido goes down. Your activity goes down. You're not able to be the person you once were. And so what Andrew's organization does is it puts veterans in touch with therapy that will help them, one, recreate a neuropermissive environment so they can secrete their own natural hormones, and two, that will help them replenish the hormones that they've lost. And so, and that's with the help of Dr. Mark Gordon from the Millennium Health Centers, who developed these types of protocols. And so Andrew set this up, and we were speaking at the same conference a couple of months later after I had him on the show. And, we just decided to join forces and start to do the podcast together. And so I brought him in, and then I brought my friend Tony Floreel, who'd originally introduced me to him, in, and we started, getting more and more content together about, that brain health, healing traumatic brain injury, PTS, and doing it through all these different ways that you're not going to learn about at the VA. We're looking at things like psychedelics now. We're looking at things like meditation and mindfulness. We're looking at things like yoga. The Warriors Ascent out of, I think it's St. Louis, Missouri, with Adam Majors. He's a great guy. They're doing some amazing work out there. So there's some amazing resources out there as far as, anywhere from individual practices. And I know I said psychedelics. I don't want to scare anybody out here to think that I'm some crazy psychedelic hippie or anything like that. But there's organizations out there that are experimenting.
You really look like a hippie, right?
I look like a fucking crazy, dirty hippie. But there's some organizations out there that are really experimenting with things like psilocybin and MDMA in moderate doses in clinical settings that are having amazing results as far as PTS therapy. And we wanted to just educate and put this stuff out here, not advocate. We're not saying go out and do these things, go down the street corner, buy yourself some LSD and try it out. We're saying, no, pay attention to the research that's going on. Don't get spoon-fed the idea that you had to take these or that these medications that the VA is giving you are the best thing. Don't get spoon-fed for that. Listen to what's going on in the world. Understand the research that's being done, and understand how to put yourself in touch with good sources. And beyond that, I think that the primary thing that we're doing now, and I think it's the most important thing we're doing now, is educating people about fitness and nutrition. So I've come full circle on that. My focus isn't on getting people as jacked as possible right now, or getting people six-pack abs or anything like that.
They're nice to have. So
yeah, absolutely, they're great to have. But I want people to be healthy. I want them to be good, functioning, happy human beings. And I think the key to that is through a complete fitness program where you're taking care of yourself. And we do that through our online courses. We just developed the online fitness foundations course, which is which sets a basic foundation for anybody who wants to start losing weight, putting on muscle mass, and taking care of their hormones. And I have to say losing weight, putting on muscle mass, because that's an aspect of it. But the biggest thing there is we have a complete module on excuse me, on goal setting, because one of the things that people get wrapped up in is they say, okay, hey, I want to lose 50 pounds. My goal is losing 50 pounds. Hey, I want six-pack abs. My goal is I want to get six-pack abs by May. But think about the idea behind losing weight or building muscle or anything like that. When you have a vanity goal, one of the problems with that is that it's usually a nice to have. It's not a necessity, right? So you're not thinking of terms of that as a necessary thing to improve your life. You're thinking of it in terms of, you know what, it'd be great if I could lose 20 pounds. It'd be great if I could lose 10 pounds. It'd be great if I had six-pack abs, but I'm not going to die tomorrow if I don't have them. Mm-hmm. So what we do in this goals module is we take you through the entire thought process, and we begin to get you to mentally connect the idea that fitness is going to lead you to be a better parent. It's going to lead you to be a better business owner. It's going to lead you to be a better better at your job, a better spouse. And in this way, fitness becomes a necessity because it becomes something that is additive to your life. Too many people look at fitness as something that's going to say, take you away from your life and put you in the gym for an hour every day. And what we try to do in that course is we come up with active solutions for people who don't have a lot of time, and we come up with ways to get them to set their priorities in a way that are going to help them to stay consistent, because that's the primary thing that will get you to your goal is consistency. And then we just set up the keto course. One of the things that I see in the veteran community, like I said, is that high level of total body chronic inflammation leading to a lot of these issues. And not only is it a problem for PTS or anything like that, it's also a problem in the general civilian population, because when you look at inflammation, that's what causes heart disease.
Yeah,
that's what causes
inflammation
cancer.
for a second, because there's a Dr. Chang, who I went and saw in San Diego. Mm-hmm. And she's just phenomenal. And I was sharing with you earlier, she went from working at the VA and helping these Marines and sailors and people who are coming in to see her, and she was getting them results. And because she wasn't prescribing all these medications to the people who are coming in to see her, the veterans, the VA was like, hey, well, you can't just tell people to go eat good and eat a better diet, and this and that or whatever, and have them get healthy, Mm-hmm. She's like, huh? She's like, I didn't understand, and she says, as a doctor, she also is an MD, but she's also trained in Chinese medicine, her whole life. So one of the things for her, she was helping get these guys all these results. And as a result of that, she said, you know what? You can have your VA system. I'm going to leave and go do this on my own. And I got a chance to meet her through a friend of mine, Mark Anthony Bates. And he introduced us, and we kind of hit it off, and we've done some work together, and I've helped her with some things. But I went and saw her in my office, and this is where the inflammation thing comes up. And I walked in her office, and when I walked out, I looked like I lost 20 pounds in an hour, like no BS. I have a before and after picture. I'd be happy to share it with you. And it was one of those things where if you can see my body, you can see the swelling. You can even see it on the back of my neck. I literally had skin when I was standing straight up was folding over top of it on the back of my neck. And when I walked out of the office, the picture that she took, there was no skin folding on the back of my neck anymore. And it was one of those things where just there's so much inflammation that we have in our bodies from the stuff that we eat and the abuse we've actually given it. And like you said, all the damn MREs, and lack of sleep and everything. So it's a huge problem. I think people out there, they're eating inaccurately, or they're possibly eating not right for their body. I go and see a lady in town here in Annapolis. She's amazing at what she does, Dr. Alexander. And she muscle tested me just, I think, on like last Tuesday for the food I should be eating, and making sure like, okay, I should be taking these things out of my diet because they're causing inflammation inside my body. And I don't think people realize how much inflammation affects cancer and affects them, aging and all those type of things. So yeah, I'm really interested in what you have to say about that.
Well, it's funny because one, I don't think that most doctors have made the connection between proper nutrition and health. And it's funny to say that, but they don't cover nutrition in medical school. Mm-hmm. For instance, yesterday, my girlfriend, who is a nurse at a local hospital here, she was telling me a story about a cardiologist that works at her hospital. This cardiologist is a marathon runner, and he has heart disease. Right now, we're talking about a cardiologist who's a marathon runner, and he has heart disease.
Wow.
Not only does he have heart disease, he also got colon cancer, right? Why does that happen, and how does that happen? How does that happen to somebody who has dedicated their lives to studying the heart and curing people of heart disease, but who's also somebody who's extremely active and who goes out and runs marathons? Well, you want to think about this for a second. You got to think about it analytically. Marathon runners have been following this high carbohydrate diet that's loaded with gluten, loaded with wheat, loaded with different sugars, loaded with omega-6 fatty acids, which raise levels of total body chronic inflammation. I'm talking about plant oils, nut butters, things like that, right? And then on top of that, this guy's going out and he's running, 5-6 miles a day, and probably on the weekends he's doing 15 miles, right? And what you have there is a recipe for inflammation. Look at triathletes back in the 1990s. They were dropping like flies. Torn aortic valves, heart attacks, all types of different coronary issues. And there was this idea for a long time that it was fat that was causing it. And it wasn't. It was inflammation. It was inflammation because the diet that was being prescribed to us by the government through faulty research on the part of a doctor named Ansel Keys was causing a lot of inflammation. And, back then, if you remember the food pyramid, not the food pyramid, it was the 4 food groups and then the food pyramid. The food pyramid was like, you need to eat a lot of these grains here and vegetables and things like that, which I do advocate eating vegetables, but then the wheat, the whole grains and things like that. There was this big thing around whole grains. Everybody should eat whole grains. Everybody should be eating whole wheat. And runners took hold of that, and a lot of people took hold of that. And it led to an increase of heart disease. So what we look at now is a healthy relationship with fats, right? Understanding that your ratio of omega-3 fatty acids to omega-6 fatty acids should be a lot more in favor of omega-3, right? It should be a ratio of one.
Say, Chris, I'm gonna make sure people who possibly, I don't know, like myself, what's an omega-3? Like, what if I were gonna go in my refrigerator and get out an omega-3 or get it out of my pantry? Like, what am I looking at here?
Right. So there's essential fatty acids that we need to survive, right? They're omega-6s and omega-3s, right? Those are both essential fatty acids. There's more, but these are the two main ones that we want to think about. Their job in the body is to either raise inflammation or decrease inflammation, right? And we need omega-6 because we need inflammation to heal, right? If you fall and you break your arm, or you get a large gash or something like that, inflammation helps your body to heal. That's called acute inflammation.
But that's like good inflammation versus the kind that gives me heart disease.
Chronic inflammation is the far more deadly kind. And chronic inflammation is like that small scrape that's going to build up a callus over time, right? And chronic inflammation happens for a number of different reasons, right? So we think about the high levels of omega-6, right? But omega-3s, which come from things like fish, fatty fish, salmon, fish oil, things like that. You can get it from algae as well. You can get it from chia seeds. You can get it from a couple of other sources. Walnuts, I think, are a very good source of omega-3s. But
what's your take on this? Like, you go to the supermarket and they have farmed salmon versus like the fresh salmon.
Well, so again, we need to think about omega-6s and the sources of where omega-6 comes from, and they come from plant-based oils. The only plant-based oils I'd recommend using in your food are coconut oil and olive oil, but the rest, like safflower oil, sunflower oil, things like that, canola oil, which back in the 80s everybody was putting in there and using to cook food. Margarine is horrible for you. That's a plant-based omega-6 oil. Those in the same plants are being used to feed grain-fed cattle, and farm raised fish. So you have to remember that it's not a matter of just eating meat. It's you are what you eat. What you eat eats, right? So anything that you eat, you're also eating what it ate.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Barney style for you. And so if you're eating fish that's been fed a lot of this omega-6 rich food, you're also eating that fish as fat, and you're raising your own levels of inflammation. And so
So if I go to the supermarket and I see farm salmon, do I pick that up and eat it, or do I not? Like, what's your opinion?
I would go with wild caught fish at all times. I'd go with grass fed beef. I'd go with pasture raised eggs. I'd go with pasture raised chickens. I would go with grass fed butter. The Kerry Gold Irish butter or ghee or something like that.
That's all I got in my fridge.
So those are the big things that I'd go with. But you also have to consider digestion, right? And because 2/3 of our immune system is located in the intestinal tract, and people don't think about that, right? And the immune system is separated from your waste by aligning that to single cell thick in some places, right? And if it becomes damaged and food particles get into where the immune system is, what's going to happen? Well, you're going to start to develop food intolerances. You're going to start to develop autoimmune symptoms like I do from ulcerative colitis. You're going to start to develop inflammation. And not only are you going to start to develop inflammation in your intestinal tract, you're going to start to develop inflammation throughout your body, because the gut is connected to the central nervous system via a very long nerve called the vagus nerve, or vagus nerve, or vagus nerve, or whatever you want to call it. I'm just playing around here. But yeah, there's a very long nerve that's connected. And that's why when you get nervous, you get butterflies in your stomach. So anything that affects your gut, right? And these are the two biggest rules I give people. You need to worry about nutrient density, but also digestibility. Is the food that you are eating digestible? Because if it's not, anything that is not digestible will cause damage. So a lot of people think that eating raw vegetables is really healthy for you, right? But think about it, right? Plants have been around here for thousands of years, right? Plants don't just not evolve. They've developed defense systems over their evolution that helps them to not be eaten, right? So if you eat a plant and it gives you an upset stomach, you're probably not going to go back to that plant again. And the problem is that today people aren't connected to their guts anymore. They're not connected to their intestinal tracts like they were. They just think they got an upset stomach from something. But if you're eating a bunch of raw vegetables, those plants have non-digestibility properties, and they're slowly causing damage to your gut. If you're eating a bunch of nuts that you haven't soaked or sprouted or anything like that, that can also cause a lot of these issues. Same thing, see a lot of people drinking raw eggs. It's not advisable because eggs have a specific protein in them that's not digestible.
Yeah, right? and you're speaking from personal experience. I would consider you as an expert in talking on the subject, because God forbid you put something in your body, it's going to cause your guts to bleed out, and you dealt with that over and over again. So you have to learn all this stuff the hard way.
Yeah, well, the way I got into this stuff was, I was competing as a bodybuilder. I don't look like much of a bodybuilder right now, but I was at one time a pretty good bodybuilder, and I was suffering big time. I was, like I said, running to the bathroom probably 30 times a day, and at worst 50 times a day. I had a flare up at Disneyland one time and ended up having to use the public restroom like I can't even count how many times. But it was a nightmare. And so I finally got to the point where I said to myself, you know what, this 8 meal a day chicken and rice diet ain't working for me, right? So I got to go figure out something else. Otherwise, I'm going to get screwed. And so I pulled everything back and went down to one meal a day. And I started to really look at what was bugging my stomach. So I'd go food by food by food, right? So I looked at rice, I looked at chicken, I looked at grass-fed beef, I looked at, I was experimenting with game meats like venison and elk and things like that. And bison and all these different things. And I would have one meal a day and I would write down how I felt. And what it came down to was meat, coconut oil, olive oil, and vegetables. That was it. That was all I could do. I couldn't do eggs. I couldn't do anything at the time because the flare up was so bad. And I was expecting that I was going to lose all my muscle, and I was expecting that I was going to get so weak, but it didn't happen. I actually started getting stronger. I actually started, getting PRs in my lifts, and I actually started getting more chiseled. I was like,
"What's the secret to looking like a sculpture, huh?"
Right. And the thing was, at the time in the bodybuilding,
listen to your body, right?
Yeah. At the time in the bodybuilding community, I couldn't tell anybody about this because if I tell the client, hey, I'm going to have you eat one meal a day, and it's going to be coconut oil, meat, and vegetables, and how many people would hire me? Probably not a lot, right?
That's honestly a lot of times when I cook, that's what I cook.
Yeah,
vegetables, a little bit of meat, some chicken.
And that's not the diet that I'm recommending right now.
Yeah.
But I like it. To say how I got into ketosis and how I got into ketogenic dieting. It was by accident. I didn't even know the science behind it at the time. But having the PhD background, I said, all right, you know what I want to do? I want to go check out the peer-reviewed journals, see if anybody else has done this. Has anybody experimented with this? So luckily, and this is why having a quantitative methodology background helps.
You just happen to have that laying around.
Yeah. I'm able to understand a lot of the methodologies they use in the epidemiological studies. I'm able to
read all that stuff and translate it and make sense of it.
Right. And so I was able to do that. I was able to start to understand the science behind it. I started coming across the work of Doctors Jeff Volek and Stephen Finney. I started looking at stuff that Dominic D'Agostino was doing, and some of the others. And slowly but surely, some of the stuff I was doing started showing up on the popular fitness sites. The Bulletproof Executive. Rule.me, those types of sites and things like that. And I really fell in love with it. And I fell in love with that style of dieting. Now, I'm not saying that I'm 100% over my ulcerative colitis or that it's even a cure for the ulcerative colitis or any other autoimmune disease. What I am saying is that if you're in a really bad situation where you are flaring up like crazy, this is one particular way of trying to pull yourself out of it. And you can look at, Dr. Wall's autoimmune protocol and a few of those other types of diets. And that's one thing we've tried to do in our ketogenic dieting course is we started to try to pull these different perspectives together. If you're following a paleo ketogenic diet, this is one way you can go. Here's your groceries. Here's some recipes you can do to eat this way. Here's a training program you could follow. We also go into, not only the ancestral stuff, but the autoimmune protocols and things like that, and the general fat loss, just general ketogenic diet program. And it's just knowledge I wanted to get out there because so many people were under the impression that, hey, I need to be eating 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight per day. And they think that the ketogenic diet is a high protein diet, but it's not. It's not. It's a high fat, very moderate or low protein diet and very low carbohydrate diet. And then there's other ways that you can do it where you could eat carbohydrates. Sometimes it's called a cyclical ketogenic diet. And there's different protocols for that as well. And I've experimented with all of them. So
it's cool, man. Well, dude, I know you got your stuff dialed in. If you were going to say, what's one of the biggest lessons you've actually learned along your career and the entrepreneur side of things and stuff you've taken away from the Marine Corps, if you're going to say, have a conversation with your younger self and just pass on some knowledge, some golden nuggets, what would they be?
Number one is know yourself. Know yourself. You really have to understand who you are in order to be an entrepreneur. You can't lie to yourself. For me personally, like I know I'm able to get up on YouTube and talk a lot. I know I'm able to communicate that way, but I'm also not a people person. I'm really not a people person. And you probably noticed you and I were talking for quite a while before we got on. And while you and I were personally interacting, I'm very quiet. But, you turn on the camera and I'm able to communicate, surprisingly. So that you have to surround yourself with people who, I guess, fill in for your weaknesses. And that's one of the reasons why I brought my buddy Tony Flowreel on. I'm also not a manager. And one of the things that the Marine Corps taught me about myself is that I'm definitely not a manager, and I'm definitely not the best leader in the world. I'm an okay leader, but I'm not the best leader in the world. And it's probably surprising for a lot of people to hear somebody who's been in the Marine Corps to say that, because everybody wants to come on and say, hey, I'm the best leader ever. These are my leadership principles, and this is what I do, and things like that. But I'm not. That's not me.
I think that's what makes you real too, is saying that and being real is, the people that often are times. My friend Mike Seeley, one of the most phenomenal leaders, I would follow the guy to hell and back. And, you'd never hear him talk about himself, never hear him say anything. And the guy was a freaking ninja, with everything that he did. And that was the guy, I would literally just hire Mike and put him in charge of something of a company. And I guarantee you, he would turn that whole freaking company around, but
yeah,
in a quiet manner, in the sense of just getting shit done. Part of the GSD program, Yeah.
Well, the reason why I don't think I'm the best leader is because I'm not a people person. I don't surround myself with people. I live where I live, and I don't live in LA, and I don't live in San Diego for a reason. Mm-hmm. And the reason is because I don't want to deal with it. You know what I mean? And that might be a weakness on my part. But I like living my life.
Redlands, California, that's a little bit further out there, right?
Yeah, it's we're about an hour out of 29 Palms. And close to San Bernardino, I guess.
I think I have a friend, John Rood, actually is from Redlands, California.
John Rood. Is he an MMA fighter?
No. Well, he's done some, he used to be doing wrestling and probably rolls around a little bit.
Did he graduate from Georgetown, or was he in the?
No. I don't know if John graduated from high school. But
I have a friend named John Rood who was a MMA fighter. And,
okay. No, this guy actually, his dad was a Marine, hardcore Marine, and he's got everything to show for it. The hat, the t-shirts, every time you see him. He's a good dude. His name's John too. And, John actually, became an entrepreneur, but it just turns out he really lives in Redlands. I know, that's so funny. I got connected to you guys.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. But, I live here for a reason. And, I keep my circle very small, as far as personal relationships go. And that served me and it's hurt me. I do feel that one of the things that's kept me up is the fact that I can adapt, and that even though I might not have the best leadership skills, and that I might not have the best managerial skills, I've been humble enough to understand that, humble enough to say, all right, well, if I don't have these skills, one, I need to learn, and two, I need to start to try to surround myself with people who do. And so that's one of the reasons why I work with Tony, and I work with Andrew, and I work with Albert, because Albert's a fantastic manager. He manages his shop very well. Andrew and Tony, great guys. Andrew's as a special forces operator. That guy's he's very, very technically oriented, very, very managerial oriented too. And Tony's just somebody. Tony Flowreel, how could I explain this? he wasn't a veteran. He didn't serve or anything like that, but he's somebody who you will look at like a picture of a really famous person on Instagram, and you'll see Tony in the background somewhere. He's a microcurrent expert and a flow expert. He understands flow, and he's worked with guys like Wim Hof. I don't know, the Iceman. He's worked with. He currently works with. He's the one who introduced me to my client in the NFL. He's the one who introduced me to Andrew. He's the one who introduced me to a bunch of people. And, he's like this guy who travels around the world. You'll see him in New Zealand one week, and then he'll be at my place eating dinner the next week. I wanted somebody like that around me because he could teach me how to do it. So.
Awesome. So again, number 2, surround yourself around just amazing teams, that the stuff that possibly you're not the best at. Know yourself, know what you're good at, know what you're not good at, stay in your lane, and surround yourself with the rest of the people who run the business. What's the best way, Chris, for people to reach out to you as far as to learn more about your programs? And I know you've got a program on how to get into keto and how to get those 6-pack abs, but it's more so how to reduce all that inflammation. And as a result of that, you get the body that you're looking for.
Right. And I have to say this, it'll be more longer lasting. You see a lot of guys, they're able to get in shape for a few weeks, get shredded for a few weeks, and then afterwards they put on weight. Same thing with women too. A lot of the bikini models and things like that. This isn't like an illusion with water or anything like that. What we're looking to do is create permanent change, where you're gonna be able to do this for the rest of your life if you want to, if you stick with it. You can reach and find us, all of our content, all of our programs, all of our articles at www.warriorsoulagoge.com. That's AGOGE.com. And you could find us on Instagram at Warrior Soul Apparel and on Twitter at Warrior Soul Gear. And if you're interested in the t-shirts, and all you don't want to hear about me talking about fitness or anything like that, you just want the t-shirts, but be warned, the t-shirts are sprayed with a chemical inside that will make you listen to everything I say. That is at warriorsoulfitness.com.
Cool, man. Well, thanks a lot, Chris. And I'll put all those in the show notes on the website too, and make sure people can get a hold of you, brother.
Oh, and check out my YouTube too, Warrior Soul Goji.
Get on YouTube.
Yes.
All right, brother. I appreciate you sharing today and sharing your story and your message and sharing some of those golden nuggets, brother.
All right. Thank you, Daryl. Or is it Lewis House? I'm just kidding.
All right, guys. I'll see you later.